Before Scania, Volvo, or DAF ruled British roads, there was an entire generation of homegrown lorry brands built with grit, powered by diesel, and now mostly forgotten. These weren't just trucks. They were the backbone of Britain's post-war industry. Some vanished in mergers, others were killed off by mismanagement. But their stories, still worth telling. Stick around, because the last few might just blow your mind. Dennis Specialist Vehicles. Dennis wasn't just another lorry builder. They were Britain's municipal workhorse. Founded in 1895 in Guildford, Dennis started with bicycles, then cars, but made their mark in fire engines, buses, and of course, specialist trucks. What set Dennis apart wasn't mass-market trucking, it was purpose-built utility. Dust carts, tankers, and fire appliances. Dennis had that niche locked down. Their vehicles were known for simplicity, durability, and clean engineering, traits local councils and contractors loved. But as the 1970s rolled in, Dennis faced growing financial pressures. In 1972, they were acquired by Hester, marking the beginning of corporate reshuffling. Over time, their truck operations dwindled, and by the late 1980s, Dennis lorries had essentially vanished from production. While their bus legacy carried on, eventually becoming Alexander Dennis, their lorries faded into memory. Today, spotting a Dennis truck on the road is like seeing a ghost from the industrial past. But in their prime, they were the quiet, dependable backbone of British infrastructure, doing the dirty jobs without making a fuss. By the way, seen a Dennis on the road lately? Let us know in the comments and hit subscribe for more lost legends of British engineering. Commer was the British truck brand that never quite played by the rules. Founded in 1905, they built everything from delivery vans to military transports, but it was their forward control trucks that made people stop and stare. These oddball designs with the cab perched over the engine looked futuristic in the 1950s and downright bizarre today. But they worked. They were nimble, compact, and offered surprising cargo space for their size. By the 1930s, Commer had been absorbed into the Roots Group, joining siblings like Hillman and Humber. Their military trucks served in World War II, and their civilian models gained popularity across Britain. But then came the mergers. Chrysler bought Roots in the late 1960s, trying to gain a European foothold. It didn't work. The brand was neglected, rebadged, and eventually buried under layer after layer of corporate chaos. By 1979, the Commer name was dead. Its quirky trucks are now collector curiosities, symbols of a time when British engineering wasn't afraid to be a little weird. ERF, Edwin Richard Foden. ERF wasn't just a company, it was a statement. After a bitter fallout with the board of Foden Trucks, Edwin Richard Foden walked out in 1933 and started his own brand. ERF Trucks were built with one mission: make life easier for operators. Instead of manufacturing everything in-house, ERF used the best available components, Gardner engines, David Brown gearboxes, and Kirkstall axles, to create reliable, driver-friendly vehicles. For decades, ERF thrived. Their trucks were popular with fleet managers and independent hauliers alike. They were lightweight, efficient, and easy to service. The clean design and durable build kept ERF on the map through the 60s, 70s, and even into the 90s. But as the global truck industry consolidated, ERF couldn't hold out forever. In 2000, they were bought by MAN, and the ERF badge was quietly retired by 2007. Today the logo's gone, but ERF still has a cult following. For those who drove them, they weren't just trucks. They were proof that one man's vision could challenge the industry. Albion Motors, founded in 1899 in Scotstoun, Glasgow, Albion Motors carried a proud Scottish motto, "Sure as the sunrise." And for the first half of the 20th century, they truly were. Albion specialized in commercial vehicles built for endurance, flatbeds, fire engines, and military transport lorries that could take a beating and keep on rolling. Their reputation spread across the British Empire, making them a top export brand during Britain's industrial peak. Albion's designs were traditional but rock solid. They became especially trusted during World War II, producing thousands of 3-ton military trucks. But like many independent marques, Albion couldn't escape the consolidation wave. In 1951, they were acquired by Leyland Motors. And while production continued under the Albion name for a time, their identity began to fade. By the late 1970s, the Albion brand was officially dropped. Today, only enthusiasts and ex-fleet operators remember them. But in their heyday, Albions were the trucks you bought when failure simply wasn't an option. They weren't flashy, but they were absolutely dependable. Foden Trucks. Foden was one of the oldest and most respected names in British trucking. Founded in Sandbach, Cheshire, in the 1850s, they started with steam wagons and transitioned to diesel by the 1930s. Known for their exceptional build quality, Fodens were used for everything from long-haul freight to military heavy haulage. Their trucks were over-engineered in the best way, rugged, dependable, and built to survive brutal workloads. Drivers love Fodens for their simplicity and solid feel. Fleet managers love them for their longevity, and with iconic models like the S21 Mickey Mouse cab, Foden became a symbol of working-class British engineering pride. But things began to slide in the 1970s. After years of financial difficulty, PACCAR, the American giant behind Kenworth and Peterbilt, bought Foden in 1980. Production continued under PACCAR's ownership for a while, but the writing was on the wall. By 2006, the last Foden rolled off the line. The name vanished, but a few stubborn survivors still haul loads today, testaments to a brand that refused to die quietly. Bedford vehicles. For decades, Bedford was the everyman's truck, reliable, affordable, and seemingly everywhere. Born in 1930 as a subsidiary of Vauxhall, itself owned by General Motors, Bedford became the UK's biggest lorry brand by the mid-20th century. From delivery vans to military transports, Bedford Trucks powered Britain's post-war recovery and supplied countless fleets across the Commonwealth. The TK and MK series were particularly iconic, easy to drive, easy to fix, and practically indestructible. You could find a Bedford hauling milk in Kent, troops in Kenya, or coal in Yorkshire. Their affordability made them unbeatable for local councils and small hauliers. But Bedford's success was also its weakness. General Motors didn't see the commercial truck side as a priority, especially with growing competition from European manufacturers. By 1986, GM shut down Bedford's truck division and sold it off to AWD, a company that itself collapsed by 1992. Today, the Bedford name survives only in old badges and nostalgia, but for a long time, it meant one thing: workhorse reliability on a working-class budget. Thorncraft was one of Britain's earliest vehicle pioneers, founded in 1896, not as a truck builder, but as a steam lorry and shipbuilding company. By the early 1900s, Thorncraft transitioned into petrol-powered commercial vehicles and quickly gained a reputation for durable military trucks. Their wartime contributions, especially during World War I and World War II, made them a trusted name with the British Army. Known for conservative, overbuilt designs, Thorncraft trucks weren't flashy, but they didn't break down either. Their Nubian series, for example, became a staple for airfield crash tenders and off-road military transport. But while the brand thrived in government and defense circles, it never achieved mass-market success in the civilian sector. In 1961, Thorncraft was taken over by Associated Commercial Vehicles, ACV, the same group that owned AEC. A year later, Leyland Motors absorbed ACV, and Thorncraft was quietly shuttered. By the late 60s, the name was gone. But Thorncraft's legacy lives on in museums, military surplus yards, and the pages of British engineering history. Scania was the heavyweight brawler of British trucking. Founded in 1921, Scania built vehicles that didn't just haul freight, they conquered it. From recovery trucks to military transporters, their machines were designed to do the jobs no one else wanted. The Scania Pioneer and Commander models became legendary for their off-road ability and raw pulling power. What made Scania special was their focus on specialist and heavy haulage markets. They didn't compete with Bedford or Ford, they operated in a different league. Their trucks moved tanks, aircraft, and anything oversized. If it was massive, weird, or dangerous, you called Scania. In 1955, they were acquired by Leyland Motors, which, like with so many others, spelled the beginning of the end. Production at their Watford plant ended in 1988 after a long decline driven by budget cuts and government contract losses. Still, Scania has a cult following today. You'll find restored commanders at heritage shows, monuments to an era when British engineering didn't just meet the challenge, it dragged it up a mountain. AEC, Associated Equipment Company. AEC wasn't just a truck builder, it was a war machine factory and a public transport powerhouse. Founded in 1912, AEC became synonymous with solid British engineering. Their Matador artillery tractors and militant military trucks were crucial during World War II, known for their off-road capability and raw toughness. But AEC also dominated the civilian world, producing buses and haulage trucks like the legendary Mammoth Major. Their vehicles weren't glamorous, but they were near indestructible and beloved by operators across the UK. In 1948, AEC became the cornerstone of the Associated Commercial Vehicles ACV Group, which later absorbed Thorncraft and other niche brands. But in 1962, the AEC story took a turn. Leyland Motors acquired ACV and began consolidating operations. AEC's facilities were gradually wound down, and by the late 1970s, the AEC badge was no longer stamped on anything new. Today, AEC is mostly remembered for its buses, especially the Routemaster. But their trucks once carried Britain through war, peace, and everything in between. Leyland Motors. Leyland Motors wasn't just a brand, it was a juggernaut that swallowed almost every other name on this list. Founded in 1896 as the Lancashire Steam Motor Company, it rebranded as Leyland Motors in 1907 and rapidly grew into Britain's dominant truck manufacturer. By the 1950s and 60s, Leyland was absorbing competitors left and right. Albion, Scania, AEC, and Thorncraft all became part of the empire. In 1968, Leyland merged with British Motor Holdings to form British Leyland, an automotive supergroup intended to defend British manufacturing against growing European and Japanese competition. But instead of synergy, it bred chaos. Mismanagement, strikes, and government intervention crippled the company throughout the 1970s and 80s. Leyland's truck division became a casualty of this collapse. By 1987, it was sold off to DAF, and when DAF went bankrupt in 1993, the remnants were eventually acquired by PACCAR. While trucks are still built in Leyland, Lancashire, the Leyland name as a standalone badge is history. The giant that once ruled British roads quietly faded into someone else's logo. And that's the story of 10 British lorry brands that built an empire, then disappeared from the roads. Some were giants, others were underdogs, but all of them shaped the way Britain moved, worked, and hauled its future forward. If you enjoyed this dive into forgotten machines, hit like, tap subscribe, and let us know which one deserves a comeback. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next run.